What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Sunshine Cup once again, and the team that we're going to be taking a look at today is Talonflame, Shadow Obstagoon, and Credilli. Now, yes, this is extremely similar to the first team that I showcased for this cup. We're just replacing Obstagoon with Furret, and the reason for that is because there are so many teams that are ABA weak to counter. Or just in general, just weak to fighting. There are so many teams weak to fighting, which is why we had to bring the Obstagoon out. That said, we're covering its weaknesses with Talonflame. Talonflame as a fire flyer, resists fighting and fairy, two of Obstagoon's main weaknesses, bug as well, that's a big one. And then Credilli just makes a great core with Talonflame and is the best save swap in this meta. So without further ado, a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel, Benny Hemlock, and a brand new expert trainer member, Dr. Green Mustache, and a super special thank you to the legend trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andrew Pitten, Musachu, Noodleman, and Speedster. Let's hop into some battles. All right, into the first match, we've got Talonflame into Abomasnow. Now, it couldn't get better than this. This is a fantastic lead. My opponent is going to throw one Powder Snow and then safe switch into a Flygon. Now, I do not have a great response. You'll also notice that I'm on Acid in this matchup. I ended up switching it to Bullet Seed later on for this team specifically, just because I felt like it worked a little bit better. That said, I'm full sending the Grass Knot here. My opponent knows they can live this, so they will let this go, maybe hoping that I was going to go for the bait of the Rock Tomb. But I do not, and now here comes a Rock Tomb because they would make it to another charge move, and they're actually going to shield that up and throw their energy right away. This is enough for either a Scorching Sands or a Stone Edge. It is a Scorching Sands, but we live that, we get the Acid farm down, and we have grabbed switch advantage in this match, which is fantastic because we want to keep the alignment that we have. In the back is a Stunfisk, and Stunfisk now will be met with the Shadow Obstagoon. Obstagoon, of course, has great fast move pressure with the Shadow damage, and counter still hits pretty hard. Of course, Night Slash is the better damage per energy move and has the chance to boost our attack. So I am going to go for the Night Slash here. My opponent's going to let that go. We don't get the boost, but that's fine. I know I can live at one more Mud Bomb without being threatened by the Thundershock farm down. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to overfarm slightly, play to the CMP tie. My opponent falls for it. They throw their energy on the CMP tie, losing it. So they're just going to let that go. And now we have the alignment that we need. They're trusting an Abomasnow, and unfortunately, Abomasnow is double weak to fire, meaning these Incinerates are doing massive damage. All I have to do is farm up to the back-to-back flies, and after that Incinerate connects, I am there. So my opponent will connect with one more Weather Ball, but I live that in the red health. Here come the back-to-back flies. My opponent knows that I'm at the back-to-back, so they let it go, and we are able to take that first win. Into the next match, we've got Talonflame into Golurk. This is kind of an awkward matchup just because of the fast move timing, but my opponent makes it pretty easy. They safe switch out into Furret, and Furret is met with Obstagoon. Obviously, Furret, Credilli, the two most common save swaps. They're both weak to fighting. It's just kind of an obvious answer to come in with your Obstagoon. Obstagoon makes it to a cross chop. This is super effective damage. My opponent is one away from the move, so actually they live that, but we still get the counter farm down. Back in comes the Golurk. Can we get to a Night Slash before they get the farm down? We can. That is absolutely massive because now we can grab a shield as well as switch advantage in this matchup. So Obstagoon putting it in loads of work. In comes the Talonflame. What's in the back? It's a Bibarel. Bibarel now will be met with the Credilli. Credilli could live any one charge move here, but I am going to shield the first. Of course, because I can just go for the Rock Tomb to lower my opponent's attack. And then at that point, I mean, Bibarel is pretty glassy. Even a Rock Tomb is going to do pretty large damage to Bibarel. They end up committing the shields. That makes my job pretty easy because now I can just go for a Grass Knot to pick up the knockout and then save my shield for the Talonflame in the back. Here comes a Grass Knot. This will be enough to pick up the knockout. And now my switch timer is up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw one, defer. My opponent is stuck in the animation. I'm able to make it to the Talonflame. Talonflame gets to the Brave Bird. That's massive overkill on the Golurk. Overkill. That's not in this cup, but we are able to take the win. Talonflame into Dubwell. So this should be a good lead because they're a double kick user. However, they're a double kick user that learns Wild Charge. So my opponent does farm up to it. I am going to respect it in case they do full send the Wild Charge, and they do. So that is a massive shield. What are they going to come in with? They're actually going to come in with the Go Lurk. I'm going Brave Bird here, but there's no need for that. Even a fly would be enough to pick up the knockout on Go Lurk. So now I'm actually going to go for that fly, because that means I can grab 2 shields from my opponent before I swap in one of my back 2 Pokemon. I'm probably just going to come in with Credilli here, because Credilli is just a little bit bulkier, and we are on Bullet Seed now, so on the actual correct moveset that I wanted to use for this team. They do full Sudden Dynamic, the Dynamic Punch, which allows me to overfarm. They end up playing to a CMP type, but I know this can only be a Shadow Punch, so I will let this go. And now, here comes the Grass Knot. This is super effective damage. Golurk is glassy. It's going to pick up the knockout. And now it depends. Are they going to come back in with their lead? No, they're not. They're coming with Pilosine. I'm going to wait the turn. And my opponent, I don't know if my game didn't visually update or if they also waited the turn, but they end up making a really nice catch onto their double. I come in with the Talonflame because I know I can just sacrifice this. They're ABA weak to fighting, so I'm just going to let this go. Wild Charge connects, and now all I have to do is come in with my Obstagoon, get the counter farm down. I won't even take a double kick's worth of damage, which is nice. And now Piloswine, even though it has a little bit of energy, I can live 1 Icicle Spear, and just by throwing the charge move, they give me a free counter in, which allows me to outpace, make it to the Cross Chop, and Cross Chop, it's super effective damage. We'll pick up the knockout on the Piloswine, and we are able to take that win. Okay, into the next match, we've got Talonflame into Furret. This is a neutral lead, so we'll just stay in this matchup, and my opponent is going to stay in this matchup as well. I am going to be able to make it to a fly, but only 1 turn later than my opponent should have been able to make it to a charge move. I mean, they make it to a Swift on 5 Sucker Punches, so they threw on 7, but I think they waited a turn, which ends up being a CMP tie, maybe hoping I'd go for the Brave Bird and get me caught in an animation. I don't know. But either way, I save switch into my Credilli. I lure out a Gligar, which is a huge bait out because that is something Obstagoon definitely does not want to see. It doesn't want to see bug, fast move damage, and its counters would be resisted. So massive bait out from Credilli. And in this matchup, look at how little Dig does to Credilli after only 1 Rock Tomb. Of course, Fury Cutters are super effective, so they can probably Fury Cutter me down into a range where the next Dig will be enough to pick up the knockout, especially here where they're basically at the back-to-back charge moves, so I kind of just have to let this go, but that's fine because I can get an energy lead on my Talonflame. Dig actually doesn't pick up the knockout, but 1 more Fury Cutter does. In comes the Talonflame. I know I can live an Aerial Ace, especially because they're double debuffed here. And that does put us in the red, but we live that fairly comfortably. In the back is a Magcargo. My opponent is ABA weak to fighting, and we've caught another team just like that. I am going to shield up 1 charge move in case my opponent is running Brick Break. It is just the Swift, and then they throw again here, but this is only enough for a Swift. So I will just probably let the second one go, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. A little bit more worried about the overheat from the Magcargo. Magcargo, of course, not even going to get the opportunity to make it to a charge move because here comes Cross Chop number 1. This is super effective damage. My opponent commits the shield, but look at this. Here comes Cross Chop number 2. Once again, this is going to do a lot of damage. Magcargo has some okay bulk, but not enough. In comes the Talonflame, and now I make it to the Brave Bird on a potential CMP time. My opponent ends up not throwing, knowing they would lose CMP anyways. They kind of had to commit to a farm down in order to win, but we are able to take that game. Into the next match, Talonflame into Shadow Pidgeot. Now this is an awkward matchup because they're a 4-turn fast move user, and we are a 5-move fast. You know what? Forget it. I didn't even say it. So anyways, they go for an Air Cutter as soon as they get there. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back because that is 10 turns versus their 12. So it's not a terrible timing. I end up getting a catch with Credilli on the next Air Cutter, which is nice. I would have won CMP, but I was worried my opponent would go for the extra, and I would just give them an entire Gust in for free. I end up going for the Rock Tomb right when my opponent would make it to the next charge move, and they, of course, they catch on their own Credilli, but their Credilli is on Acid, which means I can get to a charge move, but my opponent wins CMP in this matchup, so kind of surprising. We have a 5-attack Credilli. My opponent's is even higher, but that's no problem because we already debuffed them once with a Rock Tomb. So here comes the second debuff, and now in comes Obstagoon. Obstagoon, of course, using fighting type, charged and fast move pressure, but not weak to the flying typing of Pidgeot. And yeah, after that farm down, I guess whatever was in the back was weak to Obstagoon, and we are able to take the win. Tough lead in the next match. We see a Flygon. We're going to save switch into our Credilli. The opponent's not throwing, so I am just going to go for the Grass Knot in order to connect with some damage or grab a shield. My opponent actually lets that go, knowing they can survive that and trying to call the bait of the Rock Tomb, but now that makes this quite a bit easier for me because I can just go straight Rock Tomb in this matchup. I can shield up a Scorching Sands. That would have picked up the knockout, but not with a shield. So here comes a Rock Tomb. My opponent is forcing with the shield back if they want switch. And now I can just go for another Rock Tomb. My opponent, of course, throwing on perfect timing, going to pick up the knockout, probably with just a Dragon Claw here, and that's fine. We've grabbed a shield in this mid game, and they're debuffed. So we're in a decent position. I can now come in with my Talonflame, get a little bit of energy lead. What's in the back? It's a Furret, but we still haven't seen what their third Pokemon is. However, my opponent overfarms significantly, allowing me to make it to a cross chop, and they actually let that go, so losing all of that energy on the Furret. What's in the back? It's a Talonflame. So now we see why they just sacrificed their Furret, because their Furret had virtually nowhere to go with the 2 Pokemon remaining on my team. So now here comes a Night Slash. My opponent also lets that go, and we get the boost, which is massive. My opponent overfarms, playing to the CMP tie. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to grab that final shield from my opponent because that makes them make a decision. Am I going to pivot into my Talonflame with a charge move, or am I going to stay in his matchup? I decide to stay. My opponent tries to predict this instant pivot. They full send a Brave Bird here, expecting the pivot, and now in comes Talonflame. I'm going to watch for the Incinerate. I see it go through. I can pick up the knockout with the Fly, and now Fly will be able to knock out the Talonflame, and they're 1 Incinerate farm down range for the Flygon. So we are able to take that win. Bit of mind games in that one, but we were able to take it. I had a very easy win con when you think about it. Also fantastically in the next match, they save switch it into Quagsire. We have a good answer in Credilli. But I had a very safe play in that matchup where I throw 1 counter. If I see my opponent's Incinerate go, then I can pivot into my Talonflame while they're caught in the animation and snipe with a charge move. However, my opponent tried to predict me just switching as soon as I got there, or as soon as I grabbed that final shield, not knowing who wins CMP and going for the Brave Bird. So a good read from my opponent, but unfortunately I had a guaranteed win con, so we were able to take it. This opponent trying to play for switch with a Quagsire against a Credilli, which is absolutely insane, especially because I'm on Bullet Seed. And now I can just come with my Obstagoon, get the full farm down with counter, and apparently whatever was in the back did not want to see Obstagoon up energy, and 0 shields, so we are able to take that win. One other good lead in the next match, Talonflame into Diggersby. Diggersby, of course, completely walled in this matchup unless they're running Hyper Beam. Both Scorching Sands and Fire Punch are single resisted in this matchup, so I will just let this go. Scorching Sands connects, but with the quick attacks, they're actually already put me into the yellow health range. However, I'm going to full send the Brave Bird here. My opponent lets that go. In comes Credilli, and my opponent actually throws some energy, which is kind of nice. I would rather they throw it on my Credilli than on my Obstagoon. It is the Scorching Sands. That does very little damage. In comes a Furret. Furret now will be met with the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb will connect for some pretty decent damage, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout in 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go for a Grass Knot on my next charge move. My opponent connects with a Trailblaze. That puts me into the red health range, but we're still in an okay position here. Grass Knot now is let go, and with that Bullet Seed we're able to pick up the knockout, and we are able to take that mid game, which is huge. In comes a Bibarel. Bibarel now will be met with a Rock Tomb. My opponent actually commits the shield, which is nice. Not willing to try and call that bait, but we have the alignment that we need. In comes the Obstagoon. Obstagoon will just fully counter farm them down. My opponent realizes this, so they just resign the match. Mirror leads in the next match. Talonflame into Talonflame. How do we want to play out this matchup? So I've changed how I like to play out this matchup. I like to go for a fly right away on the CMP tie. My opponent also goes for the fly on the CMP tie, and that's fine because I'm going to just commit the shield in this matchup. Oh, actually my opponent maybe didn't get a charge. I'm not sure. Maybe they waited the turn and ended up that cost them. But either way, they go for a fly. I can't quite get the farm down, so I'm going to get the catch instead on my Credilli. But the way I like to normally play that matchup is go for a fly on the first, we both shield the first, and then go for a Brave Bird on the second, because a second fly is actually not enough to pick up the knockout even with the Incinerates. But that said, my Credilli now with an energy lead, able to outpace, make it to a Rock Tomb. My opponent ends up throwing on the CMP tie, which is fine. We win CMP. Rock Tomb debuffs my opponent. My opponent is actually on Bullet Seed as well, and I actually overfarm by 1, anticipating my opponent to also overfarm because they're not going to throw on CMP when they lose CMP. So getting an extra Bullet Seed in there is kind of nice. My opponent overfarms perfectly. Now they're going to pick up the knockout with the Rock Tomb, but we put them in the red health range, and their attack is double debuff. So what I can do is I can come with my Obstagoon, I can take 1 Rock Tomb, no problem, or Grass Knot, doesn't matter. It's not going to do too much damage. We're still in the green health range. In comes a Leap in the back. Very spicy pick from my opponent, but also insanely cool. This is a level 50 Pokemon, I believe. And yeah, Leap up to 1460 CP. Basically just a second Credilli, but with a slightly different moveset, running Ancient Power instead. That said, the pacing I believe is slightly different. I believe it's 4-3 instead of straight 4, so with Bullet Seed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snipe with my Talonflame after grabbing that final shield. I had the Brave Bird. I should have gone for the Brave Bird because the Leap actually has some decent bulk, but they try to get to the back-to-back moves. I'm now able to make it to a second fly, and this second fly will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Leap. What's in the back? Oh no, my opponent just going to resign the match, and we are able to take that win. So yeah, we've seen this lineup before. It's safe, it works. The Sunshine Cup meta is pretty predictable, and it's nice having something that can counter all the Pokemon that are weak to fighting this meta. I think Obstagoon is definitely one of the best fighters in this meta. That said, it's a fighter that is double weak to fighting itself. So if you run into an opposing fighter, say a Blaziken, that's super difficult. Of course, that's the whole point of Credilli, to bait out something like a Blaziken and connect with a Rock Tomb, which is neutral, debuff their attack, and punish with Talon. So the idea of the team still works, but of course, there's going to be more fighters later on in this meta as it develops, just because it counters a good portion of the meta. But yeah, that's going to be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Look forward to the next video. It's got an expert run in it and beyond, so that's probably what the title's going to be. And yeah, until next time, peace.